I read a lot of books. Sometime last year, I read a book that I had been hearing a lot about and that I was really looking forward to that ended up just not living up to my expectations and everything that I had built up in my mind about how good this book was going to be. And I wanted to chat really quickly about that. And the book that I'm talking about is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And this is a book that you've probably heard about. It's very popular, very well loved. And based on everything that I had heard about it, I fully expected to love it as well. But it was just a strange experience for me. This is a book about a magic coffee shop that transports you back in time, and people usually describe it as like a very cozy, magical realism, heartwarming read. And in theory, all of that is exactly my vibe, and I thought I was gonna love it. But one thing that I didn't know about it going in is that it was originally written in Japanese, and this is a translated book. I didn't really get back into reading as much as I do until maybe a year and a half ago. So when I picked this up, I hadn't read a lot of translated works. I had read some, mostly Spanish translations, and by some I mean like one or two. And I don't think I had ever read a Japanese contemporary translation. So I went into it as I would any other book, and I think that's fine. But I think for me personally, I just would have had a better reading experience if I had known, if I had done like any minimal research, or if I had read translated books in the past. I feel like it was very evident when I was reading this that it was translated, and that detracted from the experience for me, just because it was the first Japanese translated book I had ever read, so I was just taken aback a little bit and I found it a little distracting. So what I mean by it was evident that it was translated is that you always lose something in translation. If you saw my recent video where I read Babel for the first time, I haven't stopped thinking about that book, clearly. And something that the novel is about is translations. And R.F. Kuang likes to include this book in her quotes a lot, which is that translation is always an act of betrayal. And I get it. I love that quote too, because it's so true. Whenever you translate from one language to another, you always lose things in the process. You either get the translator's perspective and you lose the original, or you get a literal translation and you lose a lot of context. So what this results in is sometimes translations can read either too literal, where a sentence doesn't feel natural because it's not natural in English, but it would be natural in the language it's being translated from, or you get something that just feels a little too flat, like it's missing a little oomph, it's missing some of the language that makes an original work pop. And I don't mean to say that the translator does a bad job or that you're not reading the same book in its essence, but there's just things lost because languages can't be translated one-to-one. There's always some work that needs to be done. There's always some context lost. And I want to make a coconut tree joke really bad, but I won't. But just know that it's killing me inside to not make that joke. And we don't have the context of living in that different language and everything that it entails, about the history, about the culture of a different country. So, all that to say that I wish I had approached this book, this very sweet, lighthearted, heartwarming book that in its essence I really loved, but in its execution I went into not thinking about all this. And I have a Japan trip coming up really soon, and it's also Women in Translation Month, which it'll be over by the time this video comes out, but I'm still in it right now. August is Women in Translation Month. So I thought I would give books similar to this one. Not another chance, because now I read translated books a lot more often with that perspective, and I have enjoyed them a lot more. But what I have not done is read another Japanese translated book. So I wanted to do that because of my upcoming Japan trip. I just want to get immersed in the culture, maybe learn a little bit more about Japan and its people and its history and its places. But I kind of want to do so by reading books that kind of fall into a similar genre as this, which is just very cozy, heartwarming books, because it seems like there are plenty to choose from coming from Japan. So that is what I want to do in this video, and just see if I approach it from that translated lens, knowing that I will never fully understand the real essence of it, which bums me out to no end, but which I think is important to just know and acknowledge. See if I'll be able to enjoy a book more that way. I think all the books that I'm going to read are contemporary, and then I'm just excited to see that translated into real life when I go to Japan. So that's what this video is about. Let's get into it. Hello, so I have finished the first book in my quest to read more Japanese translated literature, and that first book was The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. This book, so cute. So let me tell you the premise of it. We are following a cat. It is told primarily from the point of view of a cat named Nana, and this cat has an owner named Satoru, and Satoru is looking for a new owner for Nana. We are not quite sure why, because we see that Satoru and Nana have a very tight bond and they really love each other, understand each other. They've been there for each other for a long time, so we're not quite sure why Satoru is looking for a new owner for Nana. But the story follows that journey along the Japanese countryside as Satoru visits several people who he thinks might be good candidates to adopt his cat. And as he visits each one of them, we learn about who that person is, how they're connected to Satoru, and we see him make that determination about whether or not he thinks they would be a good fit. And we see that he really, really cares about Nana. He wants the absolute best for her as he's having to find a new owner for her. Oh, for him. Nana is a boy cat. Oops. Nana just sounds like a girl cat name. And I think they actually joke about that in the book. So through the book, we're kind of exploring not only the relationship between Satoru and each of the people that he visits and how they've impacted his life in different ways. And we get backstories on Satoru and the people that he's visiting. But then we also see Nana's backstory and how she came to be Satoru's cat and their bond. And it's just a very cute, quick, beautiful, poignant read. I really enjoyed it. I think, like I mentioned before, I went into it kind of with the expectation that, okay, this read might be slightly different because it is a translated Japanese work. There will probably be some things that I don't fully understand. But I think the concept of it is very universal, just a bond between a man and his pet. And I think some of the issues that I had when I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold and with that Japanese translation was helped in this case by the fact that the narrative voice is from Nana the cat. So I really had no expectations on like what that would sound like. And it was very simple, very cut and dry, which I think is something that happens sometimes with translations, but like it made a lot of sense because it was coming from this cat. And cats just kind of have that vibe. So it worked really well. The novel was very funny. Nana's voice was very clever and sweet, but also like Nana had the personality that we associate with cats of like being very sarcastic and dry. And there was some dog slander, but I think it was funny and it made sense. And then after reading this, I think I was looking at like suggested books that came up for like, if you enjoyed this book, you should read this. And I saw that there was a lot of like short, quick Japanese novels, and there seems to be a lot of cat related ones. So is that just like, I mean, everybody loves cats, but I think, for example, in the Western world, I feel like dog lovers outnumber cat lovers a little bit. I feel like cat lovers always have to like advocate for being a cat lover, and like if you love dogs, it's just the norm. But it seems like, I don't know if it's just a Japanese thing or just a Japanese literature thing, there seems to be a lot of books about cats. So yeah, I was just wondering if that's a cultural thing. I'm not sure, but dogs were also mentioned. Like people obviously love dogs as well, but I was just wondering if like if the ratio is like different over there. I don't know. Something that really came through in the book is just how picturesque and beautiful the Japanese countryside is. I think this was a perfect novel to read right now because I'm in a very fall mood. The weather here in Texas obviously is not very autumny yet, but we did just drop into the low 90s, high 80s recently. So it feels like, you know, summer is coming to an end and I am really craving some autumn vibes. So this was perfect. I think the traveling aspect of the book was really cool and made me excited to visit Japan. Yeah, I really enjoyed this novel. It was like a very quick, easy, simple read. It was very like chicken soup for the soul type. Like the message was just about love and connections and the bond between you and your pet and the bond between you and different people in different stages of your life. But it also was very sad. There was a lot of tragedy kind of underlaying a lot of the backstories. It was very bittersweet. So I did shed like a tear or two, but I think overall it was just very cute and heartwarming and I enjoyed it. And I think going into it with those expectations really did make it a more pleasant reading experience, but I think I would have enjoyed it either way. And I'm glad to have read it. I definitely recommend. So up next, I will be reading Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Sukigawa. So I think this is another one in that same kind of feel and genre of just like heartwarming with a positive message, translated Japanese novel. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I think we're off to a good start. Hello. So I just got back from getting my flu shot and my COVID booster, and my arm really hurts, but I'm really glad for these antibodies, especially with the upcoming trip. I just don't want any chance of me getting sick, so hopefully these help me stay protected. But guess who I ran into on my way out of CVS? Halloween Snoopy! Isn't he so dapper with his little puffer jacket? And he just reminded me that I need to decorate for fall soon. Anyway, I thought I would check in about Sweet Bean Paste, which I have now finished. But before I do, I wanted to talk really quickly about something that I forgot to mention regarding The Traveling Cat Chronicles, which is the translator. The translator for that one is Philip Gabriel, and he's like a career translator. He has translated a lot of Murakami books, so he is very, very renowned and just very knowledgeable about Japanese translations. So I think, having a good translator is very, very key for any language translation. Moving on to Sweet Bean Paste. The author is Jurian Sukengawa, and the translator is Alison Watts. She has also translated various Japanese novels, but I think this is probably the biggest one as far as I can tell. And this is also like a very sweet, feel-good novel that follows like a central story, and then it has like one central life lesson. So this one follows Sentaro, who is a man who works at a dorayaki shop. So dorayakis are like a paste-filled pancake, and they're filled with like a sweet bean paste, hence the name of the novel. And we follow him in his day-to-day as he's working in this shop, and we learn a little about him. We learn that he is an ex-convict and that he took this job basically as an entryway back into the job market. He doesn't really see this as like his life passion. He's just trying to make ends meet with this job, and he's just kind of going through the motions. But then one day this old lady stops by. Her name is Tokue, and she asks if she can work there. She tells him that she's been making sweet bean paste from scratch for 50 years, and she gives him like a sample, and he's like, oh my god, this is the best thing I've ever tasted. But he's hesitant about hiring her because one, he's not the owner, and then two, she has some disfigurements and he's not sure what caused them. But as we go through the story, we learn that she basically had leprosy when she was young. They call it in the novel Hansen's disease. And we learn that there was a lot of discrimination earlier in the century against people who had Hansen's disease, and they were basically shunned from society. Even once a cure was developed and people were non-contagious, people were just scared of them and treated them very unfairly. They basically sequestered them into institutions where they had to live outside of society, and they couldn't re-enter society easily even after they were cured. So we learned that that has been Tokua's life. And now she's in her 70s and she really wants to work at this pastry shop. So we explore their relationship as it starts forming, and that's kind of where the story takes us. It's a really quick read. It's very sweet and heartwarming, like I said, but this one, I feel like more so than the Traveling Cat Chronicles, and then also what I remember from Before the Coffee Gets Cold, gets pretty dark. Those did have like very emotional and serious topics covered, but I feel like they were a little softer around the edges. They were kind of resolved pretty quickly, and this one, because it only follows the one central character and story, I feel like we were able to delve a little deeper, even though it is a pretty short book. And it is like a very heartwarming and hopeful story, but I would look up specific trigger warnings for this one because it does get very heavy and emotional at some points. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It was very standard, a little too like feel-goody for my taste. It was very straightforward, like there was no ambiguity about the message of the novel. It was like spelled out very directly and like repeated again and again, which is fine. I feel like the novel clearly had a message that it was trying to portray, and at the end of the novel there's even like a message from the author that tells us like how he became interested in telling this story and why he chose to tell the story, and like the message that he wanted to send with this novel. And I feel like it's very, very clear throughout, but it's a really sweet message. And I feel like it's one, especially with following somebody who had been in prison before, and then also Tokue, who now lives her life as like a disabled and chastised individual. I think that was very unique. I learned some history about discrimination in Japan. And something else that's also very clear from this novel is that in Japanese culture, having a career and like a standing in society is very important, and that's something that is explored. There's certain points where Satoru feels like he has no purpose because he's not passionate about anything, because he feels like this career isn't leading him anywhere, and he feels like he can't really advance in society because of how excommunicated he's been. So, I mean, that's true for Western culture as well, but I feel like it's especially emphasized in this novel. And the overall message is encouraging him to think of other ways in which his life is meaningful. The imagery in this one was also just so beautiful. I feel like it was, again, very perfect for this time of year that is starting to cool down, because the story takes us through the end of summer to the autumn, through the winter into spring. So you get a little taste of each of the seasons in Japan and just like the beauty that each one brings. And like there was a lot of descriptions of nature, and it was just really beautiful. As far as the translation goes, I thought it was really well done. It didn't distract in any way. I don't think there was any issues or like pet peeves that I saw. I think the message was conveyed very clearly. If anything, I think there was some parts where I thought there was a lot of repetition of certain phrases, but I can't say for sure if that was like a translation thing or if the author was just really wanting to emphasize certain things and make sure that we as readers were catching on to certain things. So I think that's the only thing that I noticed. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Up next, I have 2 novels that I'm going to read. I am going to read Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, which is a very popular Japanese translated novel. I think it came out in 2016, and I always see it making its rounds through Book Talk, Bookstagram, and it's been on my TBR, so I thought that this was a good time, since I'm already reading Japanese novels, to pick this one up. And it doesn't quite fit into like the cozy, feel-good, sweet novel genre, but we'll just see how it goes. And the next one is What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Aoyama, and this one does fit into the cozy, sweet category, and this is a more recent release, I believe. I've been seeing it a lot. I'm very interested, so I'm gonna get into these next. Okay, so I have finished reading Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. The translator for this one was Ginny Tapley Takemori, and she has done several Japanese to English translations, and it seems like she has worked with Murata on all of her translated novels. So like I mentioned before, this novel doesn't really fit in as nicely with the rest of the novels that I've been reading, just because it's not super feel-good or cozy, but it does give us a very good glimpse into Japanese culture. And although it's kind of different from the other ones in terms of like the vibe and the style of the novel. It still touches on a lot of the topics that I've been seeing pop up over and over about life, about society, about jobs in Japanese culture, like the other ones do. So let me talk real quick about what this novel is about. So this novel follows our central character, Keiko. She is a young woman who works in a convenience store. She has worked there for 18 years. She started working when she was 18 and she's been there for 18 years. So she's now in her mid-30s and she loves working at the convenience store. She is very good at working there because she's been there for so long. She knows the ins and outs of working there, and the novel has a lot of really descriptive details about the environment and about all the procedures that go into the day-to-day of working at the convenience store, and I thought that was really cool. It was really satisfying if you're a person like me who loves routines and like who loves all the small mundane seeming things of everyday life, then you'll enjoy those little details. Murata herself has worked at a convenience store. She worked there for a long time, so she wrote it from an insider's perspective, so that really comes through in the novel. But anyway, so Keiko has been working there for a long time, but since she is now in this stage in her life, in her mid-30s, where people are kind of expecting that she do something else with her life, that she starts looking for a partner, that she starts thinking about having children, about doing all these things that society expects of you and that society sees as markers of success and progression in your life. And she's quite satisfied just working at this convenience store and not having a partner, not having children. She doesn't really care about that, but she does care that her family and friends are wanting that for her and are kind of pushing her on that, and she gets very anxious about what her friends and family want for her. It's never directly stated in the novel, but I feel like the descriptions of Keiko's like love for routine and the love for order in the convenience store, and then also the descriptions that Keiko has about the way that she moves about in society, the way that she kind of imitates people's mannerisms and like their way of speaking. It read to me as neurodivergent coded, as autistic coded, but it's never outright stated in the novel, so that may just be like me projecting that onto Keiko, but that was an aspect of the novel that was very interesting to me. And viewing it from that lens, I also thought it was very interesting to think about societal expectations and the pressure that we put on people to have to fulfill all these duties that we expect from them in order to satisfy us, because we view those as markers of a normal life, even though that may not be what everybody's preferences are. That may not be what everybody aspires to. Some people are satisfied in the life that they choose, and even if it's not to your standards, to your liking, that doesn't mean that it's not valid. I think it's true in the Western world, but I think especially in Japan, it seems like jobs and your career are really a marker of your status and are really a marker of your success and fulfillment in life. And I think that is a lot of pressure, especially for somebody like Keiko, who may not want something like that, may not have the same goals, may not be fulfilled by the same things in life as what is considered normal. And that's basically what the novel explores. It's a very short and quick read, but it's very entertaining because it's quirky and it's kind of an unexpected premise. And it's from the point of view of somebody who is quote unquote on the outskirts of society. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I loved the atmosphere of the convenience store. It was very satisfying to me. Convenience stores are obviously a thing in a lot of places in the world, but I think especially in Japan, I have seen and I'm excited to experience just that their convenience stores are kind of like on another level. Here, it's just kind of like a quick pit stop on a road trip or like on your way to get some gas, and there's nothing that special about them. Sometimes they're kind of dirty or grimy or shady, but it seems like in Japan they take care of them really well, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with the workers there. But I think it's just in general their society is very clean and orderly and respectful, and that's something that I wish was true here, but I'm excited to experience a cool convenience store when I go to Japan. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it wasn't as like uplifting and feel good as the other ones that I've been reading, but it was still, overall, I think it has a really good message, and it was funny, it was quick, I liked it. French toast. I literally haven't made French toast in decades, so I'm gonna eat it and then I will talk about the last book in this video. Okay, so I have finished the last book for this video, which was What You Were Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Aoyama. And this one was translated from Japanese to English, also by Alison Watts actually, who translated Sweet Bean Paste. So the translation was great. There was like no weird issues or nothing that like distracted me or made me very aware of the translation. I feel like when you don't think about the translation, when you don't remember that it's a translated novel by the way that the words are written, that's when it's a good translation. So there was no issues there. As far as the story goes, I think this is the one that reminded me the most of Before the Coffee Gets Cold, because it's broken up into different short stories that each revolve around a central character that's going through something, that's making some kind of life decision or discovery. And they're a little bit interwoven. While Before the Coffee Gets Cold is centered around this coffee shop, this one is centered around a library, which was very cool, very cozy. Libraries are just a great setting for any book. And I think all of the stories kind of deal with people who are going through things related to their careers in different ways. There's 5 stories in total, and one of them is somebody who is going through a career change because of motherhood. They are a new mom struggling to find that work-life balance and still wanting to have a successful and fulfilling career while being a mother. There's a person who is retired and struggling to feel like they are still valuable in society even after leaving their career. There's somebody who is in their 30s and unemployed and is struggling with that. And yeah, they all revolve around career somehow and like finding fulfillment in that. And then also realizing that your worth is more than just what you do for a living. So I think what I'm gleaning from both this story and then also all the other ones really, Sweet Bean Paste, Convenience Store Woman, Traveling Cat Chronicles less so because that one specifically is about the cat and his cat owner and their relationship, but the other 3 really center around career, and I think that's something that I wasn't fully expecting from these. I knew that they would all be very poignant and have to do with teaching you a life lesson, but I didn't realize that a lot of them would revolve around what you do for a living, and I think maybe that is a significant struggle in Japanese culture. I think in the Western culture, we also talk about finding work-life balance, and I think there is a lot of pressure put on you to like figure out what you want to do. But I think maybe here more than in Japan right now, we've reckoned with the idea of your career not defining your worth, and like sometimes you just have to have a job that just provides for your life and isn't necessarily your passion, which sounds a little sad, but like there's a lot of mindsets that you can have, but like the truth is that like not everybody is going to have a dream job. People don't dream of labor. Some people have a job because it fulfills them, but also provides for them because we live in a capitalistic society. So, I mean, that's something that I have already kind of reckoned with, and I think a lot of the people around me have dealt with that as well, but maybe in Japanese culture, it's still very much your job is very tied to who you are as a person and your identity and your self-worth. So I think these novels kind of broke that down a little bit and explored it. But yeah, it was very interesting to see, and I don't know if like I fully agree with a lot of the viewpoints that what you're looking for is in the library presented. But I don't know, maybe these are still some questions that I have myself still. And it didn't stop me from enjoying the book. It was very simple, very easy to read, and if you're looking for something with the vibes of Before the Coffee Gets Cold, this one definitely has that. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with these Japanese translated novels this time around. I think going in knowing that these are translations and that there's things that are going to be lost in the context and lost in translation, I think was really key for me to set my expectations and be able to fully enjoy these novels. But overall, they were very wholesome. I think a great way to go into the fall season, just like on a hopeful and peaceful note, and also made me very, very excited to go to Japan soon. I am very excited to try dorayaki. I'm very excited to go to a convenience store in Japan. And overall, I just really enjoy Japanese culture, and these really set the scene for some enjoyable travels. So if you have any recommendations for other Japanese or other language translated novels that you've really enjoyed, let me know, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!